Today's Friday, March 26th, 2021, and this is a video just on some notes from Matthew. So, starting with Matthew chapter 12, verse 21. I have a lot of slides, so I'm just going to go fast through it all. And in his name shall the Gentiles trust. So instantly this made me think of how in USA, on the money, it says, in God we trust. And who is their God? And there's this really interesting, USA claims to be a Christian nation. The presidents love to say, God bless America every once in a while, but you don't really hear them talk about Jesus. That's a big red flag. When people put on this air of being religious, but you never, ever, ever hear them talk about Jesus, then you have no idea who their lowercase g God is. And anyways, it's really interesting that on our money, it says, in God we trust. To a lot of these people, money is their God. Mammon. They worship mammon. And so that's just one thing. And another thing, here, this verse is talking about Jesus, and it's saying, in his name shall the Gentiles trust. So it's just another theme in the Bible is that God's chosen people continuously are stiff-necked and rejecting God. And when Jesus came, so a lot of people who were Jews did believe on Jesus, and they started following Jesus. I don't think that today there should even be any Jews. There's people who follow Christ and those who don't. And it's just this thing of Jesus was here in the flesh, and there were many of God's chosen people who rejected him, and they actually were the ones who brought him up to be killed. And yet, the Gentiles, who were supposed to be the bad, not loved, unchosen people, the Gentiles actually had great faith in Jesus, even Gentiles who weren't even around when Jesus was there, like people today. And yeah, I consider myself a Gentile for sure. And I trust in Jesus' name. That's one more thing that I want to say before I move on. That today, there's a lot of people out there that try to sow confusion in the minds of people about his name. And I strongly support the name Jesus and nothing else. And in my opinion, it seems like the Gentiles are the ones who really do have trust in his name, Jesus, and don't come out of the woodwork trying to tell you about Yahawashi, and I don't believe any of that stuff. I believe the book of Revelation that says that there's people that call themselves Jews that are actually the synagogue of Satan. So I would never believe anything that they have to tell me about the Messiah. So that's enough about that one. Matthew chapter 12, verse 31. I'm going to keep this one really short because it's not that interesting, and I've talked about it before. There's just this very strong statement that Jesus says, wherefore I say unto you, all manner of sin and blasphemy shall be forgiven unto men, but the blasphemy against the Holy Ghost shall not be forgiven unto men. So it's a very striking verse because Jesus is saying basically everything's forgiven except this one thing. So it's like, whoa, okay, this is a really bad thing. You want to make sure to not do this. And I think it really just gets answered with, if you go back, why is Jesus saying this? It's because this is when the Pharisees were trying to come up with excuses for how could Jesus be healing these people, and they try to say that he's doing it through Beelzebub. And so I think that gives you context for this. I think that Jesus is telling them that by taking Jesus's miracles and trying to attribute them to Beelzebub instead of the Holy Ghost, I believe that is blasphemy against the Holy Ghost. To take an action that happens through the Holy Ghost and to try to say that it was caused by some sort of demon, by the prince of the devils, Beelzebub. Okay, moving on. Matthew chapter 12, verses 36 and 37. But I say unto you that every idle word that men shall speak, they shall give account thereof in the day of judgment. For by thy words thou shalt be justified, and by thy words thou shalt be condemned. This is just, I don't have a ton to say, nothing revolutionary here, just certain parts of the Bible will always be applicable, and certain things that Jesus said will always be good advice. And this is just good advice that you see. This is why people say, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it at all. And just certain sentiments like that, think twice about what you're going to say. Don't just shout out a bunch of things, because we're going to be held accountable for every single word that we say. Great advice from Jesus. Matthew chapter 13, verse 14. And in them is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah, which saith, By hearing ye shall hear, and shall not understand, and seeing ye shall see, and shall not perceive. So I just think that this idea of hearing but not hearing, seeing, or hearing and not understanding, seeing but not really seeing but not perceiving, I think this is the why they get off on illusion magic. And right, because those in control, the evil people, they want to make all the sheep this, hearing but not hearing. That's why they do things like they say, I'm a T, and the asleep sheep go, ha ha, what a funny joke. Well, now look at you now. You're somebody who can hear, but you don't understand. Or taking a dude and putting a few bows in their hair, and they get you to think that that's a woman. So now you're seeing, but you're not perceiving. So anyways, I think that this idea there, so I also put the word projection here, because in reality, those evil people are the ones that they think that they see, because they watch for the hand signs, and they know about the orange and the 33 coding. So they like to pretend that, we're the ones who can see because of our secret inside jokes, but really they're just deluding themselves, and they're going to go to hell for all this stuff. So who's really the one who can't see, and who, you know what I'm saying? Even if you're duped by this world, if you're one of God's children, you'll still get the message, and you'll still follow Jesus. So it doesn't even matter if you don't figure out the orange 33 thing. That doesn't necessarily mean that you couldn't see. It just means that you didn't wise up to the evil people's dumb game that they play. Those who can't see and who can't hear are the people who they read Jesus's words, and the parables go over their head, and they don't understand, and they're just giant hypocrites. Okay, Matthew chapter 14, starting at verse 6. But when Herod's birthday was kept, the daughter of Herodias danced before them, and pleased Herod. Whereupon he promised with an oath to give her whatsoever she would ask. So I picked this verse. It's just interesting, an instance of somebody's birthday party in the Bible. There was somebody's birthday party, and then some woman maybe came and danced, and the king was so impressed by the dance that he promised an oath to give her whatsoever she would ask. So this is a lesson in never take oaths. Never. And she, being before instructed of her mother, said, Give me here John Baptist's head in a charger. So this is just from Matthew chapter 5. You can read this. Do not take oaths. It is very important that you don't take oaths. This is why all these Masons, all these secret keepers, it destroys their soul to continually take oaths and to be in on inside jokes all the time. It destroys their soul. Matthew chapter 14, verse 23. Starting at verse 23. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up into a mountain apart to pray. And when the evening was come, he was there alone. But the ship was now in the midst of the sea, tossed with waves, for the wind was contrary. And in the 4th watch of the night, Jesus went unto them, walking on the sea. I picked this verse, I think, because, well, I was focusing on, there's a lot of instances where Jesus actually would go off and be alone. So being alone, I think, is something that's really important. And there's just this big contrast. A lot of times in the Bible, Jesus is being followed around by just huge groups of people from all over coming in and wanting. They talk about being pressed up against him in these huge crowds. And then there's also instances where Jesus wakes up really early in the morning to go off by himself and be alone. So that's why I picked it. And also I picked this because the thing about the 4th watch of the night, days and nights used to be really, really long. Fourth watch of the night. Could you imagine there needing to be 4 watches through the night? It's really easy these days. I can be really tired and I could stay up through the whole night by myself and it's not even that big of a deal because nights just aren't that long anymore. Days aren't that long anymore. I don't think you would need 4 watches throughout the night. 2 tops. Somebody watched through the first 6 hours of the night, the other person, 6 more hours. It's just not hard to stay up for 6 hours these days. So that's why I picked that one. Matthew chapter 15, verse 2. Why do thy disciples transgress the tradition of the elders, for they wash not their hands when they eat bread? Okay, so this is kind of, I picked this because it brought up red flags, alarms, just the hand washing things, because it's just this, I don't want to say meme just because it's so much more evil and sinister than that. In Macbeth, isn't there something about the lady's hands, washing them with blood and things like that? Hand washing is very symbolic. And, right, Pilate washes his hands clean before he sends off Jesus and gives them to the crowd. And so the Jews were obsessed. And it's kind of funny because today, you still see it's like a meme today with the Jews. Like Jerry Seinfeld likes to poke fun of how they're into cleanliness. They're very obsessed with cleanliness, probably to the point a lot of these people are extremely OCD. It's like a real thing. These people get so obsessed with this notion of cleanliness, but then they're filthy. They're filthy individuals who do all sorts of abominations, but they'll be obsessed with the idea of cleanliness. And the washing the hands in particular, I mean, there's one instance that I can think of very specifically, and that's Twin Peaks. The dad is a molester, child molester, which the whole thing about Twin Peaks is that, the dad ended up being it. And the whole thing about Twin Peaks is it's talking about how even in communities where everybody pretends it's happy and green grass and loving, underneath the surface, about 1 inch, you go underneath the surface and it's just decaying, filthiness, drugs, sexual abuse by parents. Satanists, a lot of these Baphomet Satanists are pedophiles and they sexually abuse their own children. Anyways, there's a movie, Fire Walk With Me, and the dad who molests the child is obsessed with the child washing her hands. And so that's just, this affects me in that way, making me think of, there are these people out there that will do the most heinous things, like sexually abuse their children, but then they get weird about things like hand washing, and they might even become abusive towards their children, sexually abusing them, and at the same time being really obsessive and strange about things like hand washing, like having a complete breakdown because they're telling their child who they sexually abuse to wash their hands. So maybe that some of you know what I'm talking about there. Matthew chapter 15, starting at verse 36. Okay, getting into something more lighthearted, more fun. And he took the 7 loaves and the fishes and gave thanks and brake them and gave to his disciples and the disciples to the multitude. And they did all eat and were filled. And they took up of the broken meat that was left 7 baskets full. So it was 7. I mean, probably in this case it really was 7. But 7 is symbolic of bounty, great, powerful, all those things. And they that did eat were 4,000 men, beside women and children. And he sent away the multitude, and took ship, and came into the coasts of Magdala. And I was curious if Magdala is where Mary Magdalene is from. So, what this made me think of, there's this thing in mathematics, the Banach-Tarski paradox. The Banach-Tarski paradox is a theorem in set theoretic geometry which states the following. Given a solid ball in 3-dimensional space, there exists a decomposition of the ball into a finite number of disjoint subsets, like puzzle pieces. Disjoint meaning they're not overlapping, and so you can break up a ball into puzzle pieces, which can then be put back together in a different way to yield 2 identical copies of the original ball. Indeed, the reassembly process involves only moving the pieces around and rotating them without changing their shape. So this is the caveat. They're not really like puzzle pieces in this mathematical setting. However, the pieces themselves are not solids. They're not actually like a puzzle piece, but infinite scatterings of points. The reconstruction can work with as few as 5 pieces. So it's not like a solid object would break off into 5 puzzle pieces that then would rotate and make 2 new balls. It's more like a ball would be broken up into a bunch of like Star Trek, when people are getting teleported away and they're kind of dusty for a moment. It'd be like if the ball got turned into 5 dusty, cloudy versions of balls that could then be rotated and put back together to make 2 solid balls again. Anyways, the reason I'm picking this is because just in life, this happens all the time. So people talked about this in some classes I took in university, and they love to take something like this and turn it into NASA outer space land. So when this was first presented to me, I believe that the way that people framed it was turning a pea into the sun. Okay, the sun is not a sphere. The sun is a disk. It's not a sphere. So they always got to get their programming in there. Like they have fun one-upping each other on how often they can bring outer space fantasy land into things. Because that's not even a good representation of what's going on here. You're not turning a pea into a huge sphere. You're turning a pea into 2 peas. So you see how people love to take ideas like this and reinforce programming rather than even making sense. This theorem doesn't say anything about turning a pea into a huge sphere. It says something about turning a pea into 2 peas. Anyways, the reason I'm bringing this up, it has to do with this. Taking the fish and breaking them. Maybe what Jesus was doing was taking a fish and making it into 2 fishes and then handing one of the fish to the disciples. Taking a fish and making it 2 fishes. So there's actually these high-level mathematical concepts that support things like the ability to duplicate objects. And so I just think it's a lost opportunity. The point of this and what I want to make of this is when you're in school, even though America, USA, tries to pretend to be very Christian, every chance they get, they'll be undermining the Bible and pushing outer space fantasyland. I mean, America, USA is the one who did the whole NASA thing. So very satanic, not supporting the Bible, constantly pushing this false agenda. And nobody came out and said, oh, this theorem, it's like when Jesus took a loaf of bread and fish and made enough to feed 4,000. That's a better representation of what this theorem is saying. This theorem is saying that you could take 1 fish and keep duplicating it and make enough fish to feed 4,000. What a missed opportunity. People in my life have just always taken the opportunity to push NASA outer space land because they've been a part of a club, Orange 33 Club. So one more thing to say about this is that it's kind of interesting. Somebody just told me yesterday, an event, a life event that connects to this. And, similarly to this, taking 1 fish and feeding 1,000 people with it. Somebody just told me a story yesterday how they went to someone else's house. And they were there to just do some chores, do some house stuff. So cooking was one of those things. They go in the fridge. There's a pack of meat. They take out the pack of meat. They cook the meal, and then they leave. Right? Because I'm guessing that they're prepping this meal for somebody in advance. So then this other person comes home and they find the meat cooked. But then they open up the fridge and the raw meat is still in there too. And nobody understands what's going on because as far as anyone is concerned in this scenario, there only ever was 1 thing of raw meat. So let me just say this story again from the top. There's 1 thing of raw meat in the fridge that anybody knows of. Somebody comes in, grabs the meat, cooks a meal, and then they leave. And now the other person comes in and now there's 2 things of meat. There's the cooked meat, and then there's also still raw meat in the fridge. So you guys see what's going on here? Just a weird instance where everybody involved in the scenario, as far as they know, there only ever was 1 thing of meat. Now all of a sudden, there's cooked meat and there's still the raw meat. What the heck happened? Okay, so now I wasn't there. This is just one of those strange instances that people have sometimes where I could have sworn there was only one piece of meat. How is this happening? And so I thought I would share that. Do you have any experiences like that where objects have duplicated? As far as you can tell, an object duplicated and you can't explain how it happened. Well, Jesus was able to take a fish and a piece of bread and feed thousands of people. All right, continuing on. Matthew chapter 16, starting at verse 13. When Jesus came into the coasts of Caesarea Philippi. So what I want to point out here, Philippi, probably the Philippines, right? And Caesarea, something that I forget about all the time. Well, okay, and one thing that just came up, C-section, Caesarean section, Caesar, they probably were doing all of these same in vitro cutting out stuff back in the old times. Caesarean section probably was being done in Caesarean times and by the inverted noble people at that point, I'm guessing. Anyways, the cross-dressers. So that's one thing. Another thing, when I think of the Bible in times past, I consistently forget that it is Caesar and Roman times. For some reason, when I went to public school, I learned all this stuff. I've consumed a lot of media about Roman times, but it's like nobody ever likes to keep saying that Roman times and Jesus are very much the same thing. Just, I guess the point I'm trying to make here is, for whatever reason, there's a lot of Roman media out there, and it's like disjointed from Jesus. For whatever reason in my mind, I forget that Jesus is around at the same time as Caesar and all the Roman stuff. Okay, so maybe that's just a personal problem, but it's something I need to keep reminding myself that these times are joint. I guess it reminds me of how, in my opinion, when they describe medieval times, it sounds like when I'm reading the Bible, but it seems like in the media they make it this whole new thing. Anyways, continuing on. Whom do men say that I, the Son of Man, am? And they said, Some say that thou art John the Baptist, some Elias, and others Jeremiah, or one of the prophets. He saith unto them, But whom say ye that I am? And Simon Peter answered and said, Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. So this is just an interesting in contrast to a lot of times when Jesus was out among the multitude, he would tell people, don't tell anybody that I did this, go pay your dues to Moses, etc. He didn't want to talk about that he was the Christ. But this is just kind of a contrasting that he took the disciples aside and was kind of checking them. So what do you guys think? I just think it's an interesting, different perspective. Then charged he his disciples that they should tell no man that he was Jesus the Christ. So Matthew chapter 16, verse 27, For the Son of Man shall come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and then he shall reward every man according to his works. Nothing in particular to say about this verse other than there's a lot of fake, phony Christians out there that they try to downplay works. Okay, read what Jesus actually had to say about works. Here's a very good instance of what do people who downplay works have to say about this Bible verse? Okay, continuing on. Matthew chapter 17, starting at verse 1. And after 6 days Jesus taketh Peter, James, and John his brother, and bringeth them up into a high mountain apart, and was transfigured before them, and his face did shine as the sun, and his raiment was white as the light. And behold, there appeared unto them Moses and Elias talking with them. So I just want to say that this always reminds me of not even a Star Wars fan or anything like that, but the holographic image technology that they have in did I say Star Trek? Star Wars, I mean, where the droid like shoots a beam of light and then they see the like light silhouette of the person. This just reminds me of that. I think this idea just gets taken a lot in the media of there appearing a few like ethereal beings that are able to talk and communicate. While he yet spake, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and behold, a voice out of the cloud, which said, This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased, hear ye him. And when the disciples heard it, they fell on their face, and were sore afraid. And Jesus came and touched them, and said, Arise, and be not afraid. And when they had lifted up their eyes, they saw no man, save Jesus only. And as they came down from the mountain, Jesus charged them, saying, Tell the vision to no man, until the Son of Man be risen again from the dead. And his disciples asked him, saying, Why then say the scribes that Elias must first come? But I say unto you that Elias is come already, and they knew him not, but have done unto him whatsoever they listed. Likewise shall also the Son of Man suffer of them. Then the disciples understood that he spake unto them of John the Baptist. So this is just an important, I don't know, thing that is revealed, that Jesus revealed, that Elias is John the Baptist. And so I guess I'll just say here, thinking back to the image of Jesus going up, and I mean what just happened here, the Transfiguration, is that what they call it? It's just interesting to me, the number 3. 3 is just a very important number, and of course should make you think of like the Godhead, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. And so to me it's just interesting, the 3, Jesus, Moses, Elias. And so it's like the 3 prophets, basically, the 3 major prophets, and Elias is John the Baptist. Just something to know. So continuing on, but I say unto you that Elias is come already, and they knew him not, but have done unto him whatsoever they listed. Likewise shall also the Son of Man suffer of them. Then the disciples understood he spake unto them of John the Baptist. Moving on, Matthew chapter 18, verse 7. Woe unto the world because of offenses, for it must needs be that offenses come, but woe to that man by whom the offenses cometh. I picked this Bible verse just to express that there is a necessity for evil. And just because you don't know why, then that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean that God isn't fair or whatever. It's just God's ways are above yours. So I know it sucks and it's painful that there is all this evil, but it is what it is, and it needs to be this way. It must needs be that offenses come. It is absolutely necessary for evil to exist. I don't know why, but it's the way it is, and it's not our place to question God or his will, period. Matthew chapter 18, verse 10. Take heed that ye despise not one of these little ones, for I say unto you that in heaven their angels do always behold the face of my Father which is in heaven. Okay, there is something strange about how angel and angle are very similar. Even, I mean, the word angel, a lot of people misspell the word angel as angle. And if you look at the word angel, it kind of looks like it could be angle. And this makes me think of angles in that there's us here on the ground thinking up to heaven to where there's an angel, and then think of the angel as beholding the Father. Like, to me, that's an angle. The point of us up to our angel, up to the angle at which the angel is beholding God. And it's just something to think about. And just so what I think of, I know it's cheesy. Sometimes I ask for God to send an angel to watch out and protect me and my family. Now, I don't know that angels actually get sent out or sent out. I mean, I know they do sometimes, but just these days, I don't think so. And just this line in particular, in heaven their angels do always behold the face of my Father. Well, our angels, that in heaven they're angels. So is the concept of a guardian angel that is specifically for us, is that a real thing? Does it just mean they're angels? Like, anyways, the word there as like a possessive thing is interesting. And the fact that they're always beholding the face of the Father, because the Bible also talks about certain beings that are literally always looking at God. And so do we have angels in heaven on our behalf that are always looking at God? Okay, I've said enough there. Matthew chapter 18, starting at verse 15. Moreover, if thy brother shall trespass against thee... Okay. I picked these verses not because it's anything spectacular that I've never known before. This is just good advice for conflict resolution. Now, the problem is that a lot of these institutions, a lot of times we lack this progression in the structure of society these days. I'll show you what I mean. Moreover, if thy brother shall trespass against thee, go and tell him his fault between thee and him alone. If he shall hear thee, thou hast gained thy brother. I guess a big takeaway, and this happens a lot in workplace settings, you should never go over people's heads. Never. And if it's ever happened to you, you know the way that it makes you feel and how it's one of those things that just, it brings instant rage when someone goes over your head and for something that they should have just come and talked to you about. And so I love seeing instances like this where it's like everybody knows that we hate being treated like this. Oh, look, Jesus was telling people, do not act like this. It is a terrible way to act. Okay. If you have a problem with someone, you're supposed to go and talk to them about it. You're not supposed to go over their head. But if he will not hear thee, then take with thee one or two more, only one or two more. So notice there's progression, and it's a natural progression, and it's not going from 0 to 100. It's going from 0 to 10 to 20 in a very natural way. If he will not hear thee, then take with thee one or two more, that in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses every word may be established. It's like an intervention, a very minor intervention, 1 or 2 very close people. And if he shall neglect to hear them, tell it unto the church. But if he neglect to hear the church, okay, so that's the final step. And I'm sure that evil churches these days, remember, the Orange 33 Club, the evil people, it's a broad way to destruction. The crowd is evil at this point. So I think that evil churches probably will tell people this and say, look, the church is coming to you and telling you that you're doing something bad. But the problem is that people are a part of these horrible churches these days that don't really follow Jesus and all that. So I don't know. Today, my point is, today, I don't really think we have the same structure of, oh, I tried to reason with you, so now let's go to the church. I don't think that we have let's go to the church these days, at least most of us. And people who are a part of a church, it's usually a bunch of snakes at the top, so. Okay, continuing on. Matthew chapter 18, verse 22. Jesus saith unto him, I say not unto thee until 7 times, but until 70 times 7. So I just picked this because, well, it's relevant to what I was just talking about. Conflict resolution. Jesus told us how to conflict resolution. And then Jesus also told us how many times to conflict resolution. We're supposed to be extremely forgiving. Go to the Beatitudes. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. If you're not a merciful person, why do you expect to get mercy? We've all messed up. We've all screwed up. We all need mercy. So we need to have mercy on other people. And a lot of times, you can't say, oh, my friend, we've had these quarrels 5 times, and then cast them off forever. Your life is full of this stuff, coming to disagreements and working through them, and none of us are perfect. And you're going to come to conflict more than 5 times, more than 7 times. Jesus saith unto him, I say not unto thee until 7 times, but until 70 times 7. Okay, and again, I just like to read the Bible and notice when numbers are being used symbolically. I even have a note here, Mo6 Gorillion. Notice that 7 is being used symbolically, and also the 70, throwing zeros on the end of something makes it bigger too. So I don't think Jesus literally meant, 490 times you're going to forgive people. He just meant that there's an extremely large amount of times that you need to be forgiving of people. And the whole 6 Gorillion thing, if you want to know why people always talk about 6 million, it's because they're trying to force a prophecy to happen. 6 is symbolic of being half of the 12. And then when you throw a bunch of zeros on the end of it, it just means like a bunch. So if you want to know about the famous 6 million, it's a symbolic number, and it represents half of the 12 tribes. Continuing on, Matthew chapter 18, starting at verse 33, I guess. Shouldest not thou also have had compassion on thy fellow servant, even as I had pity on thee? And his Lord was wroth and delivered him to the tormentors. So I picked this because very interesting, this concept of tormentors, till he should pay all that was due unto him. Man, I don't even want to know what people had to do. How is being sent to a tormentor giving you money to pay your debts. I don't even want to know. So likewise shall my heavenly Father do also unto you, if ye from your hearts forgive not everyone his brother their trespasses. We need to be forgiving. So this was there's a parable of the person who owes a bunch of money, and then the king says, oh, I'm going to forgive you. You don't owe me that money. And then that person who just got relieved their debt goes and starts trying to collect debts on other people, going and hounding on people that owe him money. God hates hypocrites. Moving on. Matthew chapter 19, verse 17. And he said unto him, why callest thou me good? There is none good but one, that is God. But if thou wilt enter into life, keep the commandments. I connect a lot with this verse because it's been said of me before. People have said that, oh, that guy can't even take a compliment. And I don't want compliments. I don't care. There's a reason I don't show myself. There's a reason that my name is a fake name. I don't want any glory. I don't want any of this. The whole reason I do my channel is because I want to find in the beginning I wanted to find other people who were like me and who could see things that I want. But at this point, it is what it is. I'm here, and I'm just going to be doing this until I die, as far as I know, because I have nothing else to live for at this point. But I don't want any glory. I'm not good. I was wretched. I was a wretched, miserable alcoholic. I've done so many horrible things in my life that I'm continuously repenting for. I'm not good. Don't call me good. Anything good that I've done is because Jesus woke me up. It's because God. Anything good that I've done is because of God. And basically everything that has come from my own ego in this life has been horrible and things that I continuously repent for. So anyways, I guess I'll point out too, it's this thing where evil people try to blow up your ego. If you do make videos, and if you do, start to do stuff like this and get a following and get people following you and watching your work, you're going to get evil people that come out of the woodwork and try to blow up your ego, telling you you're great, telling you you're awesome. And we're not supposed to, don't take praise like that. It's not, people have tried to shame me before. Oh, Hans, you can't even give that guy a compliment. I don't want your compliment. I don't need it. And so here, just read this verse, Matthew chapter 19, verse 17. Why callest thou me good? There is none good but one, that is God. But if thou wilt enter into life, keep the commandments. He saith unto him, which? Jesus said. So here's just great advice from Jesus. A big part of the Bible should be people looking for advice on how to live their life. And, a lot of people like to come out of the woodworks and say, I don't need a book to tell me how to live. I don't need a book to tell me not to kill. Jesus still gave tons of great advice that you can just see that even though people might claim that, that's common sense to do this, it's not like people act like this. Think of how often people actually act like this. So he saith unto him, which? Jesus said, thou shalt do no murder, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness, honor thy father and thy mother, and thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Matthew chapter 19, verse 21. I guess this is just skipping one verse. Jesus said unto him, if thou wilt be perfect, go and sell that thou hast, and give to the poor, and thou shalt have treasure in heaven, and come and follow me. So these are just some great verses. If you want to go to heaven, this is what you should do. Don't do evil things. Treat other people how you should be treated. Love God more than anything. And if you're rich, get rid of it all. But when the young man heard that saying, he went away sorrowful, for he had great possessions. Skipping forward just a little bit, when his disciples heard it, they were exceedingly amazed, saying, who then can be saved? So why do people not talk about this? And it's probably because, they're a bunch of rich Christians. Some of the richest people I've ever met have been like Mormons, who they try to pretend to be so pious, but they're extremely rich. And it's like, did you not read anything that Jesus said? And I think just the major thing to take away from this, Matthew 19, verse 25, the reason why people were so taken aback, who can possibly be saved? Why do you think they said, who can be saved, after Jesus said that, oh, you're perfect, but you're rich? Get rid of all your riches. The reason that they're so taken aback is because in the time and even today, people have this false notion of, well, if you made it on this earth, then clearly God loves you. You wouldn't have all this money if God didn't love you. But Jesus came down and said, nope, that's the opposite. The opposite is true. You're rich. Well, what did you do to get all that money? You better get rid of it. And anyways, that's just something that I always connect with. There's a reason when Jesus would say things and people would be taken aback and surprised, there's a reason. And in this case, it's because a lot of people have this false idea, and especially back then, people had this false notion of, wow, this person has fancy clothes, this person has a nice carriage, God must love them. And that's not true. Matthew chapter 19, verse 28, and Jesus said unto them, verily I say unto you, that ye which have followed me in the regeneration. So I think just the word regeneration here is interesting. That's why I picked this verse. Regeneration, the idea of generations and to be regenerized. When the Son of Man shall sit in the throne of his glory, ye also shall sit upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. Okay, Matthew chapter 21, starting at verse 8. And a very great multitude spread their garments in the way. Others cut down branches from the trees and strawed them in the way. And the multitudes that went before and that followed cried, saying, Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest. And when he was come into Jerusalem, all the city was moved, saying, Who is this? And Jesus went into the temple of God and cast out all them that sold and bought in the temple, and overthrew the tables of the money changers and the seats of them that sold doves. So I just love one of my most favorite parts of the Bible, and this part, one of my most favorite parts of the Bible, knocking over the tables of the money changers, and just imagining this great scene of Jesus coming into the city and the whole city moved. And I think this is the whole idea of why they do parades, why the military loves doing parades through cities. They want to have glory like this. Okay, continuing on. And when the chief priests and scribes saw the wonderful things that he did, and the children crying in the temple and saying, Hosanna to the Son of David, they were sore displeased. Just the sickness, the pure evil sickness in these people, that when you read the Bible, you can see that the scribes and the Pharisees, they were always lurking in the shadows, and the way that they would become disgusted at people having faith in God. It just shows you how hypocritical and wolves in sheep's clothing. And something that just popped into my head that perfectly describes this. People have told me before about instances, very few instances, I wonder why, in churches where the church allows just a random, a regular person to go up and speak. I've had people comment that the best sermon that they ever heard was from the church actually opening up and letting regular people speak. Somebody told me that the best sermon they ever heard was from a regular person who was allowed to go give a sermon. And guess what? I just imagine this, that wolf in sheep clothing, who knows why they allowed this to happen. Most churches don't allow this to happen. I just imagine them sitting in the background, seething that this regular person is doing such a good job, and the anger, and the person who told me about this story said that they never allowed people to do it ever again. So the church leaders allow people to speak, people come up and speak and do an amazing job, and guess what? They never allow people to do it again. That's life on earth with these wolves in sheep's clothing. Matthew chapter 21, verse 22, and all things whatsoever ye shall ask in prayer, believing ye shall receive. The power of belief is so important. And all you have to do is think of Satanists. They like to take things from the Bible and flip it and make it their own. Think of how in your average Christmas movie, the entire point of the movie is that, and especially the pure faith of children. Think about how powerful the pure faith of children is in these Christmas movies. Those movies are all about the power of belief. And here you go. Matthew chapter 22, starting at verse 1. And Jesus answered and spake unto them again by parables, and said, The kingdom of heaven is like unto a certain king, which made a marriage for his son. I honestly don't know why I picked this one. Maybe we'll see later. Oh, it might have something to do with this one. But when the king heard thereof, he was wroth, and he sent forth his armies, and destroyed those murderers, and burned up their cities. Oh, okay. I see what's going on here. So this is just to give context for, mostly for this. Change the subject. It's an interesting concept that I study every once in a while, or just I see it every once in a while, and I go, that would be nice if more people talked about this or knew about this. Matthew chapter 22, verse 13. Then said the king to, Then said the king to the servants, Bind him hand and foot, and take him away, and cast him into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are called, but few are chosen. So don't the U.S. Marines jack this verse, the 22 verse 14? Pretty sure the Marines steal that. And it's talking about the broad way to destruction and the straight and narrow path to salvation. And what I wanted with these three verses, I just wanted to give context. Matthew chapter 22, there's this parable that Jesus is speaking of. And notice that in this parable, there are two separate punishments. In verse 7, But when the king heard thereof, he was wroth, and he sent forth his armies, and destroyed those murderers, and burned up their city. Verse 7 talks about a punishment of burning, and verse 13 talks about a punishment of being cast into outer darkness. And so that's all that I want to bring up here, is that as far as I can tell in the Bible, there's two different punishments. Some people are tormented forever in everlasting punishment in hell, the lake of fire. But it also talks about outer darkness. And all I'm going to say is this. People, even me, in times past, I would have trouble with, well, what if there were people out there who they lived pretty good lives, but they just didn't believe in Jesus? And they weren't a horribly evil person, but they had no faith in God. They had no faith in Jesus, but they weren't terrible. What happens to them? I've had questions like that in the past. And I think that this is the answer. I don't think everybody is tormented in fire forevermore. Some people, I think, get cast into outer darkness. And so let me just put this into perspective. Those types of people who, for more or less, live an okay life, they have no faith in God or Jesus whatsoever. What do they usually think happens when they die? Nothing. They think nothing. They think incorrectly. Well, maybe for them it's true. Who knows? They think, well, before this, what was it? Nothing. Well, that's what's going to happen after this. Now, that's not even true, because we are not of this world. So maybe that is true for these outer darkness people. I don't know. Maybe they weren't here before. Maybe those of us who are like, nah, that's not it. Maybe it's because it's just different for us. I don't know. However, these people who don't live terrible lives, but they have no faith, they think that in the end will be nothing. Maybe that's what outer darkness is, that they become like they never were. And just to me, that makes sense. In my opinion, it seems like the Bible talks about two separate punishments, burning and then outer darkness. In both cases, it's weeping and gnashing of the teeth. But I just think maybe outer darkness is this notion that scientism pushes, so that maybe people that aren't pure evil, but they have no faith, they don't believe in Jesus, their punishment might just be ceasing to exist and just becoming just going into outer darkness, which I don't know what that's like. But something to think about. Matthew chapter 22, starting at verse 15. Then went the Pharisees and took counsel how they might entangle him in his talk. These people are the worst. They were sitting there lurking in the shadows, watching him do all this great stuff, and they could think nothing but how to trap him. And they sent out unto him their disciples with the Herodians, saying, Master, we know that thou art true, and teachest the way of God in truth. Neither carest thou for any man, for thou regardest not the person of men. Tell us, therefore, what thinkest thou? Is it lawful to give tribute unto Caesar? So what I'm getting at here is, notice how these people are trying to entangle him, and they despise him, and they want to destroy him. But when they come to his face, they call him master. They say he's true and teach the way of God in truth. They're fluffing him up and then trying to catch him in a lie. And you see that with shills all the time. A backhanded compliment is any comment that blurs the line between an insult and a compliment. These people act a certain way. I get comments like this all the time that they come and they try to say something that looks on like, oh, this is a great video, but, and then they hit you with something. Concern trolling is also similar to that. So that's just what I wanted to show there, that the same people who want to destroy Jesus, to his face, they'll come and say, oh, master, you're so smart, you're so truthful. And then they try to trip him up by asking him about Caesar, or about money, tribute. But Jesus is smarter than them and always had better answers. He oftentimes answered their questions with questions, which they couldn't answer. And so continuing on, Matthew chapter 22, verse 19, show me the tribute money. And they brought unto him a penny. Jews, they brought a penny. That was their tribute money, a penny. So I think that's funny. Matthew chapter 22, starting in verse 28. Therefore, in the resurrection, whose wife shall she be of the seven? For they all had her. So this is just another instance of what I just showed, where, let me see if I show, yeah. So look at these people coming out of the woodwork and trying to trip up Jesus with these crazy thought experiments. What if there's this woman who had seven, her first husband died, and then the brother came in, and then that one died 7 times. So same thing with these people. They love these insane thought experiments. Do you know these people I'm talking about? That they love to come out and say, I mean, just take any philosophy class on metaphysics and you'll come into these insane thought experiments. Why is there a train track branching off with 5 on one side and 1 on the other side and blah, blah, blah? That's just exactly what this reminds me of. Say there's a woman who was married to a guy and then he died and this happened 7 times. Has that actually ever happened? People love to come up and talk about these scenarios where it's like, well, what if this? And it's like, has that actually ever happened in real life? Anyways, the point of this is that they're hypocrites and that the world is full of these people that they come in like bad faith. They have bad faith. The same day came to him the Sadducees, which say that there is no resurrection, and asked him, saying, Master, if a man die having no children, his brother shall marry his wife, and raise up seed unto his brother. Okay. The point of this is, the people who approach Jesus they say there is no resurrection, and they come and they ask him about resurrection. Do you know what I'm saying here? Where there's people that love arguing from bad faith. If you don't believe in the resurrection, what are you doing coming here with this crazy thought experiment asking about the resurrection? And it just shows you, it goes back with this type of thing of concern trolling or backhanded compliments. People that come out of the woodwork with bad faith. If you don't even believe in the resurrection, what are you doing coming to Jesus and coming up with this crazy story and asking about the resurrection? You don't believe in the resurrection. So that's just something that I notice a lot. You'll notice a lot where people who don't believe something, they try to come and pretend to be sympathetic, but really they're just trying to undermine it. You see this happen with flat earth all the time. People they'll pretend to be giving an argument for flat earth, but what they're really doing is trying to undermine it. You just see this they have no new tricks, nothing new under the sun. They play the same tricks. They've always been doing this stuff. If somebody comes up and presents a really bad argument and they're pretending to be sympathetic with that argument, they're doing this sort of thing. Okay, continuing. Matthew chapter 22, starting at verse 36. Master, which is the great commandment in the law? This, I'm just going to read it really quick. Just great advice from Jesus. One of the things when you're reading the Bible that you should be looking for is advice for how to live your life and how to get to heaven. So I'm going to read this. Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these 2 commandments hang all the law and the prophets. Matthew chapter 22, starting at verse 43. He saith unto them, How then doth David in spirit call him Lord, saying, The Lord saith unto my Lord, Sit thou on my right hand, till I make thine enemies thy footstool. If David then call him Lord, how is he his son? So this is just an instance where this was the last time that people tried to catch Jesus in a trick by asking him a question. Because, so Jesus is saying, well, why, if Jesus is David's son, why would David be calling him Lord in spirit? And, yeah, and no man was able to answer him a word, neither durst any man from that day forth ask him any more questions. This was the nail in the coffin of them trying to trip Jesus up through asking him these questions in bad faith. They didn't actually, I mean, hopefully you're understanding what I mean by asking questions in bad faith. This is just a perfect example of it. The resurrection thing. The people who are coming and quizzing Jesus about the resurrection, they don't even believe in the resurrection. Anyways, moving on. Matthew chapter 23, verse 1. Then spake Jesus to the multitude and to his disciples, saying, The scribes and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. All therefore whatsoever they bid you observe, that they observe and do, but do not ye after their works, for they say and do not. Now these people are a bunch of hypocrites. They know how to talk the talk a lot of times, but they won't walk the walk. And these people are it's still the people who run churches. They know the correct thing to say sometimes, but their actions will speak differently. For they bind heavy burdens and grievous to be borne, and lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves will not move them with one of their fingers. But all their works they do for to be seen of men. They make broad their phylacteries, and enlarge the borders of their garments, and love the uppermost rooms at feasts, and the chief seats in the synagogues. Why don't Christians act against these things? If you go to a church, it'll have a social hierarchy. There will be elder tables, and when you go to churches, they talk about things like elders, and there is a clear hierarchy in any modern church, and it's not supposed to be like that. Nothing has changed. These people are just the exact same way as they've ever been. And greetings in the markets, and to be called of men, Rabbi, Rabbi. People love being called Rabbi, Master. The Catholic Church shouldn't exist. Nobody should be called Father. All of these things. But be ye not called Rabbi, for one is your Master, even Christ, and all ye are brethren. And call no man your father upon the earth, for one is your Father, which is in heaven. Neither be ye called masters. So this is just something that I can never not notice it anymore. Everybody wants to be called master today, and just on TV and the media, it's always master this, master that, master that. Even in places where it's not even like an instance where, oh, you're getting a university master's degree, which the whole reason it's called masters is probably to do this, to be blaspheming. I'm just saying, anybody on the world stage who is being promoted, they'll say that they're a master. And I just see this in day-to-day life. Like, there will be people that say, oh, a master gardener is selling stuff. And it's just some schmuck. It's a nobody. These titles mean nothing. We're supposed to be humble. We're supposed to humble ourselves. This, going back to, sometimes people give me grief for, I don't want people just giving me compliments all the time. I don't care. I don't want titles. I don't want any of this. I don't. And in the same way, we shouldn't want titles. There's a reason people feel imposter syndrome and all that. It's because people's egos have just been inflated out of control. And we're not supposed to want to be praised like that. Just do good work and let your work speak for itself. And don't aspire to be called by titles and all that. And whosoever shall exalt himself shall be abased, and he that humble himself shall be exalted. But woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites. Okay. Oh, this one is just worth focusing on, because for you shut up the kingdom of heaven against men, for ye neither go in yourselves, neither suffer ye them that are entering to go in. I connect with this verse because the very people who are the most evil and certainly going to hell and all that, they're gatekeeping. They're shutting up the kingdom of heaven, because almost everything that comes out of their mouth is to try to take people away from God. These people, they know the earth is flat. They know that Jesus is true and that the Bible is true, but they spend this enormous amount of effort shutting up the kingdom of heaven against men. And the way that they do that is by pushing all of these false stories and talking about planet every 5 seconds. That really does take people away from God. And that's a big reason they don't want people to wake up. So many people wake up through, when you figure out the earth is flat, you know that God made it. And anyways, Matthew chapter 23, starting at verse 34, or 24. Ye blind guides, which strain at a gnat and swallow a camel. Just such a strange and funny verse from Jesus. I don't know exactly what it means. Swallowing a camel is an interesting idea. Maybe just that it just reminds me of they'll just devour anything. The Bible talks about people devouring widows' wives, just this insatiable need to devour and destroy is what swallowing a camel makes me think of. And just the way that morbidly obese people, sometimes they'll like eat tons of food without even chewing it, just straight swallowing a camel. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you make clean the outside of the cup and the platter, but within they are full of extortion and excess. I just picked this because it's reflecting that, or, another instance of a lot of evil people are OCD and obsessed with cleanliness, all while they're the most vile people out there. Matthew chapter 23, verse 35. That upon you may come all the righteous blood shed upon the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel unto the blood of Zacharias, son of Barachias, whom ye slew between the temple and the altar. So I just thought it was very interesting here how it goes from Abel to Zacharias. So the notion of A to Z probably already existed in Jesus' time. Abel to Zacharias, A to Z. Matthew chapter 24, verse 34. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away. Great side-by-side verses. The first verse is very good because I don't think Jesus was here 2,000 years ago. I think that's a bunch of bullshit, and I think that they love just making up numbers, if you research any bit of false history, you'll see that there's a pretty big consensus that a lot of time in history has just been totally made up and placed in there. Like, people talk about, I don't know, I want to say people say something about 400 years of missing history or something, or like 1,000 years that were just implanted in. Yeah, I really do not think that Jesus was here that long ago, personally. And I think that there probably are people or one person, maybe, I don't know, who they were here when Jesus was here and they're still alive. Maybe they live underground. I don't even know. But using satanic modern medicine and the fact that people really did used to live a long time. I was just reading, I forget where, somebody living to like 180 years old. And that was back when time was going really slowly. So I think it's very possible that somebody was, and is still alive, who was there when Jesus was here. And verse 35 just shows the importance of words. Read John chapter 1, words. God created this place with his word. Jesus' words shall not pass away. Matthew chapter 24, starting at verse 48. But, and if that evil servant shall say in his heart, my Lord delayeth his coming, do not say that Jesus is taking too long to come back. Just don't do it. And shall begin to smite his fellow servants, and to eat and drink with the drunken. The Lord of that servant shall come in a day when he looketh not for him, and in an hour that he is not aware of, and shall cut him asunder, and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. Do not be impatient for God's return. And, yeah, I mean, that's just the main thing. I guess here too, this is probably why, in my opinion, they added lots of fake time in history, because they want people to think that God is delaying his coming. And I don't think he is at all. I think Jesus was here not that long ago, and I don't think that there's any delay. And time is being sped up now. And yeah, so we're there. Matthew chapter 25, starting at verse 24. Then he which had received the 1 talent came and said, Lord, I knew thee that thou art a hard man, reaping where thou hast not sown, and gathering where thou hast not strawed. And I was afraid, and went and hid thy talent in the earth. Lo, there thou hast that it is thine. Oh, there thou hast that is thine. Starting to get a little tired, out of energy at this point, but I'm going to try to finish up. I don't know exactly why I picked this. Oh, because of this, outer darkness. Here's just another instance of outer darkness. So, and cast ye that unprofitable servant into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Which servant? This is talking about the servant that was afraid and hid the single talent in the earth and did nothing. So the smart servants were the ones who took their money and they made interest on it, and they had interest to bring back to the king. The servant who gets thrown into outer darkness is the one that was scared and just hid it in the dirt and did nothing with it. So maybe this is talking about people who, I guess, heard the gospel, but then just were scared and they did nothing about it. And those are being cast into outer darkness. Maybe it's like a type of lukewarmer. Somebody who they heard about Jesus, they know about it, they might even pretend to be Christian, but they don't do anything about it. They're just scared and they just hide their money in the ground, and they're just like, well, Jesus is coming back, and they don't do anything with it. So that's my opinion about that. Matthew chapter 25, starting at verse 41. Then shall he say also unto them on the left hand, Depart from me, ye cursed, into everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was a-hungered, and you gave me no meat. I was thirsty, and you gave me no drink. This difference between outer darkness and everlasting fire. Matthew chapter 26, verse 29. But I say unto you, I will not drink henceforth of this fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom. And when they had sung a hymn, they went out into the Mount of Olives. So I picked this verse because me personally, I was an alcoholic. When Jesus woke me up, I stopped drinking. That was a big part of my awakening, and I haven't drinking since. And I just think it's interesting that Jesus will not drink henceforth of this fruit of the vine until the day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom. So, I mean, there's going to be a wedding, and the Bible talks about weddings and wine, and so maybe we'll all get to have a glass of wine with Jesus at the wedding. I don't know. Matthew chapter 26, starting at verse 63. But Jesus held his peace, and the high priest answered and said unto him, I adjure thee by the living God, that thou tellest whether thou be the Christ, the Son of God. Jesus saith unto him, Thou hast said. So I made a whole video about that. You can go watch it. Matthew chapter 26, verse 41. Watch and pray that ye enter not into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. He went away again the second time and prayed, saying, O my Father, if this cup may not pass away from me, except I drink it, thy will be done. I just really like these two verses. I connect with them a lot. Unfortunately, verse 41, the spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. It's really easy to talk and say things, but then doing it is a whole nother thing. And verse 42, so the Lord's Prayer is a great prayer from Jesus. And here's another great prayer from Jesus that I like, and I want to commit these to memory too. That's a future Bible video I want to do, is talking about memorizing certain Bible verses. And just these connect with me, and I do want to memorize Jesus's prayer here. Oh, my Father, if this cup may not pass away from me, except I drink it, thy will be done. Oh, something kind of interesting. Matthew chapter 26, verse 66. What think ye? They answered and said, He is guilty of death. The very verse where people say that Jesus is guilty of death has 666 in it. It's Matthew chapter 26, verse 66. So I just thought that was just strange and unusual how there's a 666 verse that is talking about Jesus being guilty of death. So continuing on, then did they spit in his face and buffeted him, and others smote him with the palms of their hands, saying, Prophesy unto us, thou Christ. Who is he that smote thee? And I mentioned this before in my last video, but it's interesting just the difference between palms of the hands, and then in other parts of the Bible, people took palm trees and were praising Jesus. So there's just a contrast between the followers of Jesus praising him with palm trees or palm leaves, and these people smacking him with the palms of their hand. Matthew chapter 28. Starting at verse 11. Now when they were going, behold, some of the watch came into the city, and showed unto the chief priests all the things that were done. And when they were assembled with the elders, and had taken counsel, they gave large money unto the soldiers, saying, Say ye, his disciples came by night and stole him away while he slept. This is just a part of the Bible that I don't know why it's not really, I mean, it is well known about, I'm sure, but it's just not something that you hear people mention, at least me personally. The bribing of the soldiers is a really interesting part of the gospel. So these soldiers, they saw everything that happened, and they saw that Jesus was no longer in the tomb, and the Jews gave them a huge amount of money to spread lies, saying that his disciples came by night and stole him. And if this come to the governor's ears, we will persuade him and secure you. So they took the money and did as they were taught. And this saying is commonly reported among the Jews until this day. I just think that's a really great last little line there. It's commonly reported among the Jews until this day, this lie, that the soldiers were paid a bunch of money to lie and say the disciples moved the huge stone and stole him in the night. And Jews, I guess, probably still today say stuff like that, I guess. I mean, nowadays, they probably just say that Jesus never existed or other things. Anybody who's still a Jew today, there's a reason that they hate Jesus. And otherwise, they wouldn't call themselves a Jew today, I don't think. Anyways, I just think it's funny, the part that says it's commonly reported among the Jews until this day. Just like, I can just see them being so... It just reminds me of the Pharisees, that they saw all the wonderful works that Jesus did, and it made them angry. It's like those people who, like the Jews, who would be so smug in perpetuating this lie. This group of people, they love to take lies and just keep perpetuating it. It's a thing that they do. And so I can just feel the smug, them keep saying this lie to themselves, and they try to delude themselves that it's true, just because that's how badly they did not want Jesus to be the Messiah. They're sick. Matthew chapter 27, verse 54. So I think this might even be one of the last things I have, where I'm basically done. Were these soldiers the same soldiers from here? Now when the centurion and they that were with him watching Jesus saw the earthquake and those things that were done, they feared greatly, saying, truly this was the Son of God. So I'm just curious if the same soldiers who were bribed were the ones who witnessed when Jesus gave up the ghost, all the earthquake and all of that stuff. I'm just curious if it's the same exact guards. And that's the last slide. I hope you enjoyed. God bless everyone.